As a child, I was driven to Ballinasloe many times. When we talked about Ballinasloe, we talked about Ballinasloe as a destination. It was akin to hell or purgatory. The hospital itself was built in 1833 as the Connacht Asylum. By 1845, the famine struck. Nearly 2 million people died in a 5-year period. And people who survived, who didn't emigrate, were struck with what I would call post-traumatic stress syndrome. By 1950, St. Brigid's Mental Hospital had 2,200 inmates. The whole town of Ballinasloe had a total population of 5,400. And then, of course, another 1,000 people in Ballinasloe gained their livelihood by working in the mental asylum. So that was the powerhouse industry of Ballinasloe for many years. I do a lot of research for people who want to trace their ancestry. I used the 1901 and 1911 census. Interesting, when you go to the end of the line in the census in 1911, they asked questions about everyone in the house, where whether you were blind, deaf or dumb, an idiot, an imbecile or a lunatic. And under that act in 1838, the Lunatic Act, the Dangerous Lunatic Act it's called, of 1838, you could commit someone to an asylum on your word only. Not going to a doctor, not going to an assessment. You could say, oh, my brother, my mother, my sister, they're mad and I want them locked up. If a woman, God love her, fell pregnant, or if she was promiscuous as a young girl or whatever, you could have that child locked up in the asylum, committed to the asylum on the basis that she was a danger to herself and a lunatic. Those poor women, and indeed the poor men that were locked up, could be locked up for life. If the person who committed them, your brother or your uncle who committed you, if they died in the middle of all that, then nobody could let you out because the person who committed you was dead. Lots of things dead, done in the dead of night, and a blind eye turned by the state to all this chicanery and shenanigans that were going on. Enter that building today. It hasn't been used as an asylum because we deinstitutionalised the treatment of mental illness in Ireland in the 1960s and 1970s. Take yourself into that building today, if you're allowed in, because obviously it's a state-owned building, it's locked up generally, but if you gain access to it, you walk in there, you would be shocked. It's like a place that's frozen in time. Easily, it's the scariest place I've ever wandered into. There are some broken windows and whatever, but in general, the place looks like it had just been abandoned the day before. You can imagine people in straitjackets, tied, so they couldn't move their arms, sometimes chained to the bed because they were a danger to themselves or to others. You can imagine the frustration of people who weren't insane but had been locked up for being socially unacceptable in communities. You can imagine the suffering that they had, knowing that the people who put them in there were their own parents or their own brothers and sisters or their own siblings. It must have been dreadful. Imagine feeling that you had been abandoned by your own family and consigned to a limbo from which you were not in charge of escaping. You couldn't prove yourself well and say, okay, I'll do a test next week and they'll let me out. That wasn't allowed. You were committed for the duration of the person who sent you in there. You would have a moment with that your brother, your father, your uncle, your wife, whomever, and you would have this showdown and say, and bring you to Ballinasloe. And you would see them, the blood drained from their face as they realised that they were going to be brought in here. You could reassure them, oh, it's only for a while, well, you're getting better, John or Mary. And they wouldn't believe you because they knew that ancestors of theirs, aunts and uncles and grandaunts and whatever, had been sent there for life and never released. 20% of all the inmates that were committed to lunatic asylums in Ireland between 1920 and 1950 died every year.